Hey everyone, welcome back to the Circle Club Show. I'm your host Tyrone. Today we're talking about the ending to Miss Marvel. Carol Danvers shows up. Uh, Make sure you subscribe to What's Next with Corey over here. He is our Marvel expert. He knows it all. This guy has been predicting everything. He's been on quite the heater. Both of us, really, honestly. And that's why you got to make sure you subscribe because we predicted a lot of things. We got a Black Panther video coming out that you need to check in. And yeah, we just been on top of this predictions, honestly. Corey. So you thought that our friend Nick Fury was going to show up, but instead they threw a little curveball on us here, and now we seem to get Carol Danvers. My initial reaction to seeing Carol, I was stunned. I mean, my mouth dropped. Like originally I said it was gonna happen, but then you convinced me. I jumped over to the Fury, and I was like, it makes sense. It made a lot of sense for it to happen. But we get Carol Danvers instead. What do you think about the larger MCU? What this means? These two are clearly connected. Any ideas about the Marvels coming ahead? What do you got for us, my friend?
So let me just start for the record. I love telling people when I'm right. This time I'm wrong, and I'm okay with being wrong here. I'll tell you why, right? So what Tyrone was saying, I've been going a lot off logic here. How the MCU is working, the pace at which it's working, what makes overall sense. So I thought Nick Fury made a lot of sense here. That being said, right, there's a lot of people out there complaining about how things aren't moving quick. This is something you should be excited for. Them bringing out a big pillar hero for one of these TV shows is beyond tremendous. I think that's the best word to use, right?
Yeah.
We talked about this a little offline. When it comes to the superheroes for the Avengers, right? We already know the OG squad.
Yeah.
The OG squad that's kind of left us. What we're left with Thor and Hawkeye, right? You think about the second phase of those Avengers. Who are the big pillars? Black Panther, Doctor Strange, Captain Marvel, right? We know what's happened to Black Panther, but when it comes to Captain Marvel, she is that girl, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people say, "Are you that guy?" No, she is that girl. She's got it. She got the powers like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it's like, how are you gonna bring this girl with all these powers, this big punch, dealing with all these different entities, to such a small level street person like Miss Marvel right now, right?
Yeah.
And I think the reasoning for that, a lot of it is justified with how they portrayed Kamala in the show, right?
Yes.
What do we know about Kamala? She is a djinn, right? What have they always associated djinns to? Genies, right? Hold on to that thought for me.
Yeah.
Now we think about the bangle. What has the bangle done for her? It's unlocked her powers.
It's protected her.
Seeks what she's been seeking, right? And unlocks specific things. We don't know the full extent to what this thing can do, right?
Yep.
We've talked about it being possibly from Kree tech, whatever it might be, right? She's gone back in time. What we do know, though, is that this bangle will help seek what she is seeking. And where we're at with Kamala, she has now come full circle. She is a superhero. She's accepting of it. So what does she do? She takes a moment of realization, right? To say, hey, like, this is what I've always wanted. I'm finally here. Everything's great, right? And then all of a sudden the bangle starts glowing, right? And lo and behold, Carol Danvers comes in. I think there's no coincidence there that her being of this genie-esque background, and her having the bangle unlock something is telling us that there's some preordained destiny here going on where she needs to be with Captain Marvel, right? And I think for her, that's who she wants to be with, right? So as a superhero, for me, if I became a superhero, I know who I want to work with. Get me with Iron Man right off the bat,
right? Spidey,
right? So maybe there's an element to the fact that Kamala is now seeking or wanting or wishing to work with Carol, right?
Yes.
And there's some type of threat. And I think the threat is going to give a little bit more details to the bangle here in this Kree tech that we believe.
Yes.
But what it's going to do is push us a little bit closer to her being that higher entity, right? Like we talk about with Peter Parker. Him being not so ready, but having the abilities to allow himself to work with people like the Avengers, right? So I think this is going to lead to tying a lot of dots, not only in Loki with the sacred timeline and how that worked, but how this Kree tech might be coming from the bangle, where the bangle really comes from, how it really ultimately works. But the logic I'm starting to get is it provides some of this wishing ability,
Mm.
granting those wishes.
Yeah.
Not all the time, but for very important things that are necessary for the larger universe to happen.
Yeah, and I think that we're gonna get a lot more about these Bengals. I mean, I like the only other thing I can think about is in Shang-Chi, right? There's sort of like this whole thing about the rings and like where does it come from? They're calling out to me. Like where are they sending this message to? We know Carol Danvers kind of goes off and it's trying to investigate a little bit more into it and diving into it. I have a theory that potentially she found the other Bengal and somehow her touching that other Bengal made some sort of connection between the two. I think, when we look into some of the comics and lore of Marvel, what we do see is that the ancient Kree artifacts typically allow people to exchange place in the negative zone in reality with reality. And for those who don't know what the negative zone is, it's just a parallel universe to Earth's. And there's a lot of negative atoms and things going on. But that would explain a lot how these two sort of have exchange wherever they are. But I think that's clearly what has happened. So I think Miss Kamala might be wherever Carol was at the point. So she could be in danger. She could be in trouble. Maybe that is potentially the plot of the Marvels. Like they're trying to now exchange with this girl, and I think we might see, and actually in the Marvels, we might see the next scene of whatever is happening here. Kamala's parents walk in and go, "Where's our daughter? Who are you? Oh my God, aren't you you're the one my daughter goes crazy about?" And there might be some sort of connection there as well. I also think that it's to your point. I think we don't realize quite yet how important Carol Danvers is to the Marvel universe. When you talk about the comics, Mr. Marvel, or whatever you want to call him, Marvel, he was a pivotal point in this sort of phase of where we are, where there's galactic fights, there's eternal fights, and all these things. And we've said it over and over. Spider-Man can only help you so far, but once you get to these cosmic battles, that's when you sort of need the main muscle. And I think Brie Larson, you think about it, you go, why would you get Brie Larson for a role that really is a minor role? You wouldn't, because she's a seasoned actress. She's got her chops down. That's someone you're gonna lock for the long term, and I think now we're gonna start to see some of that play out a little bit.
Yeah, I think something to note too, and I really feel like not enough people are talking about this. Like we already kind of know it's coming, but there's not enough hype behind it, right?
Yes.
What is coming in the future? We got Secret Invasion. We got the Marvels, right? There's a lot of teasing right now, especially from this Miss Marvel, right? To Kree versus Skrulls, right? And we know in the comics, typically the Skrulls are the bad guys, right? And I think in Secret Invasion, there's been a lot of talk about how we've really only seen the good Skrulls from Captain Marvel, right? And there are bad Skrulls out there. There are not necessarily, we don't know the full dynamic of how these things are going on. And I think Secret Invasion is going to give us more insight into how that works and what this dynamic really looks like, not just from a biased perspective of the Skrulls, right?
Yes, I'm glad you said that.
But also, I think it's going to tee up really what's going to happen for the Marvels, right? I think it's really going to be the set off for the Kree versus Skrull open warfare, right? Because at this point, it's really just seemed like a genocide from the Kree side. I don't fully believe that's true.
No.
If we're really being honest with each other, right? So I think this is going to lead to Kamala being somewhere out there involved, thrown into this situation. And of course, we know Captain Marvel's already involved with it. We can see how Monica could probably get involved with it. But I think this is something that might be something that's really happening before Secret Wars, right? We talk a lot about Secret Wars and everything that's happened. And I know for you and I, recently, we've started to lean more towards Secret Wars is probably a lot longer away than we really want it to be, right? So what can you do before this, right? I think an example of a great storyline from the comics that people know and love, the Skrulls versus the Kree, right? And I think this is going to be the direct direction that they're going in for the Marvels at this point.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty safe bet to think that that's where they're heading. I think that we can't also think. I really love that you pointed out that the Kree versus Skrull battle, it's very one-sided, and that we don't fully know what to believe. And also, I would say is we can't rely on the comics to be that guide for us to know where the direction they're gonna go. For all we know, is they could end in peace, love, happiness. Everyone is together and they're working together because the MCU goes its own direction, and that's what I love about the MCU. Typically, when you're looking at something, it's a book gone to movie. You're like, oh, they changed this, oh, they took that out. But I actually like that about Marvel because it gives them more to play with, more to open with, right? You could take inspiration, but you don't have to really rely on that to be the source material. I think also that Carol Danvers, as you said, we haven't gotten a ton of her yet, and I think to promote this movie, to make it a big deal, and that's what you were saying about Nick Fury. We thought we were going to get a little bit more Nick Fury. We keep hearing that Samuel wants to be in more stuff, right? And so I think we're going to start to see more him, more Carol Danvers, the Marvels. I think just when we talk about just Miss Marvel, what this means for her universe, I think this also is a pretty big thing to be happening. And we talked about what is she going to be doing when Bruno's gone, because Bruno's sort of her right-hand man. This kind of interjects her right into it. Like she won't have any time without Bruno or some sidekick or someone there for her, because she's going to still be learning probably with Miss Marvel. So that's sort of what I think this ending means and what it explains. And we also get a little bit of the X-Men right before this, and we didn't dive too much into it. So I'm curious what you think about that as well. Now that we have this potential X-Men thing going on, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so a couple things real quick. When it comes to like the Captain Marvel stuff, to wrap that up, I think the interesting thing of that is, right, like they're clearly associating Kamala to Captain Marvel, right? And when you think about the Marvels, you got Captain Marvel, Monica Rambeau is basically a second Captain Marvel, and then you got Kamala, right? So they're really establishing how much power Kamala has a potential in having, being with these individuals, right? And I think we always complain too about Captain Marvel being a little bit too OP. So something like the Skree versus SKrull War might be the thing that's necessary, because even in Endgame, she shows up last minute and almost owns Thanos, right? And just whoops his whole big ship like that again, right? So they need to up the ante a little bit there, make it a little bit more believable that they could fight. So the threat has to be huge with basically two Captain Marvels and Miss Marvel there, right? But when you think about the mutants, right, and this is something that really sticks with me, right? Is, again, we can't fully go off the comics, but even with WandaVision, they allude to that those powers were always there with Wanda, right? And it got unlocked by the Mind Stone. We really only have two people within the MCU right now that we can point to and say they're probably mutants, or definitely mutants. It's Wanda and Kamala. And now when you start thinking about that power that I started talking about with Captain Marvel, right? It brings the mutants to a whole new level, right? We're not just dealing with the super soldier. We're not just dealing with this genius in Iron Man. We're dealing with legitimate power-hungry threats, right? Like a Magneto, a Professor X. These guys are very OP. So when you start thinking about how they're bringing in the mutants, I like it, because the thing I talk about over on the What's Next channel when it comes to Kamala and the mutants is it allows for you to easily transition into how they are here now, right? Like there was always this hidden thing within them, but something unlocked it, right? That's allowing it to be seen now. And I think that's important to establish how these people go from not being here at all to these super overpowered individuals, right? And this show, I think, does a great job in establishing how quickly Kamala can go from not having powers to owning these powers, right? Because it's always been really within her, right? I think that's the key, right? Like, it's not some new thing that came to them, right? And we even talk about this with Steve Rogers, right? Like, the super soldier serum, and he was just kind of right out there, right off the bat,
running to it,
right? So I think the way they're gonna try to finagle them in here, they've already really laid that groundwork first with Wanda, if we really think about it. This Miss Marvel aspect of it, if it really being inside of her and being unlocked, It's just the second instance they're doubling down on that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, when you look back at Wanda, she's extremely overpowered, especially when you think about Doctor Strange, right?
Mm-hmm.
So seeing these characters that they might add, like a Magneto, a Professor X, a Wolverine, and getting them caught up to speed really quickly, they've established why that can happen, right?
Yes, yes.
That's what's the key within the MCU, the consistency behind the actions that they're doing. And I think they are laying that groundwork so it is consistent once they fully bring them in.
Yeah, because I think if you sort of make it that it's like that they're built different, right? Their genetic composure is different. It sort of makes sense why they can learn faster, why they can do things quicker, why they can train faster, right? And that way you don't really have this sort of muddy thing of like, oh, how are they getting their power so quickly? It's like it's always been there. They just didn't really know how to harness it or activate it, or they didn't have this overcoming thing to kind of push them to have to be in that scenario. And I think that's what we get from Miss Marvel. One thing I want to mention too about the Marvels coming up, that's coming out July 28th, 2023 as of right now. That's going to be a big movie next year. Can't wait for that and Ant-Man. You know, a lot of people are saying Phase 4 is kind of falling off and kind of mid or whatever. I think honestly this has been a good phase. It hasn't been great like some of the others, but I think you're also comparing that to the Infinity War, the Endgame, which is like you're never gonna compare it, you know, to that. Like you think about basketball, the 2016 NBA championship was such a big deal because it was this 3-1 comeback. Regardless of what happened next year, it was never gonna be big, right? You know, that Patriots comeback 28-7, never gonna be as big the next year. And so I think people gotta calm down a little bit and realize that we're on good pacing right now. We've gotten some great new characters in this universe, and now we're gonna start sort of stepping into that Avengers thing that everyone is so desperately impatient for, right? And I think with this Marvels movie, just a little information about what's going on here. We do know that Amir, Kamala Khan's brother, is gonna be back. Her mother's gonna be back. The father's gonna be back. We know that Nick Fury's gonna be in it. Monica, Miss Marvel, and recently Samuel L. Jackson just went back to do reshoots, and so the fact that they went back to do some reshoots tells me that maybe they're sort of aligning and changing things based on potentially bringing back some more of the X-Men stuff, the Kree stuff, the SKrull Wars, and so I'm very excited about where that's going and where it's going to head to next. Yeah, I don't know about you, man, but how are you feeling right now about the Marvels? Because at first we weren't really too hot about it, so.
Yeah, honestly, at first I wasn't too hot about it. I really didn't care. I think it was an example of like a lot of people's sentiment out there. We didn't have that emotional attachment to Carol like we did before, right? I think it comes down to the fact that she was just extremely overpowered. So I think they need to provide a little bit more emotional attachment with Carol in this movie. I think that has to be done. You need to get a better public approval rating, I guess you could say, for Carol coming out of this movie, because she is a pillar character. She's not going anywhere. Captain Marvel is consistently in the Avengers throughout the comics. I think with her character, how they've established her in the MCU, she definitely should be around for a while. We just need more of that emotional attachment there. But that being said, they've done a great job in Phase 4, providing more elements to what the Marvels is going to bring that gives that emotional attachment off the bat, right? Really enjoyed Monica Rambeau's character in WandaVision. Think she provides like almost like a contrasting element to Captain Marvel a little bit, right? I think it kind of helps play into the, anytime you bring Nick Fury, let's be honest, it's like bringing like Morgan Freeman on the screen, right? It's like we love it, right? Samuel L. Jackson, Morgan Freeman, can't go wrong. Always gonna love them no matter what they touch, right? So more of Nick Fury I think is important. Like we talked about before in previous videos, we haven't seen him in a long time, and like we talked about in the What's Next video for the season finale for Miss Marvel, I have a very strong emotional attachment to Miss Marvel right now.
Yes.
One of the strongest out there really in the MCU. So now it's making me really excited to see what this really is going to transpire, right? Especially if they lean into the Kree versus SKrull War. That's a great storyline. So now they have a great storyline being built there with the Kree SKrull War, hopefully. You got two great characters that we now have emotional attachment with Monica and Kamala. And now all you have to do in this movie is bring a little bit more of that emotional attachment to Carol now that she knows who she is, right? And really mix it. You have all the ingredients there, right?
And you forget
key element.
And then 3, you got Miss Marvel now that people really are going to really love. And so, to your point, when you add in these three people surrounded, it's impossible. If you have three people that are so likable and you put them around one person who's approved, and it's not even that Carol Danvers, we don't like her, because I think people like Brie Larson. I just think that the way she's been used so far has been sort of like, okay. I think that putting her surrounding with those really likable people, it's going to work. And I think we're going to have some really cute moments. We're going to have some moments where you're like, dang, these girls feel like sisters. They're connected forever now. There's going to be something there that I think makes us go, okay, I feel safe with these people in the MCU.
One thing I would not like, truthfully.
Let's hear it.
Is I would not like almost like the approach Iron Man first had with Spider-Man, like very distant, like he's mentoring him, but like shuns him a lot,
right?
Like, not really wanting him involved. Like, hey, bro, like just stick down there, do your thing, stop trying to be me, right?
Right.
I think that is the direction they can't go with Captain Marvel, because again, we're going
She's
back
doing
to
her
what's
own
the most
thing.
important thing with the Captain Marvel character. We need more emotional attachment to her if we're going to continue on with her here, and her doing something like that is only further gonna make us not like her, because of how much we really like Kamala right now, right? We really, I think, need, especially when you think about how they bring in Carol in this end scene, seeing how clearly Kamala loves Captain Marvel, right? Like, I think she can recognize, hey, this person clearly looks up to me.
Totally.
So for her, she needs to like have like that DJ, The Rock type of mentality, like, hey, like come underneath my shoulder, let me help you out, right? Like,
I
really
could definitely
embracing the mentor role for us to like her. Because if she doesn't, it's only going to turn me off even more to Captain Marvel, if I'm being honest. Because she always wants to be this Lone Ranger, and I think it worked for Iron Man because that's his personality, right? But like, I really don't see it with Captain Marvel. I don't want her to continue being like, I got this on my own, right? Like, open yourself up to the team, open yourself up to these individuals that are on your side. That's what I want to see.
I think we will see that. I think just thinking about how men in general are kind of taught to be less emotional, less connective. I think we see a lot of the time women are way more inviting, they're way more understanding, and that's also a really big trend just socially where we are, where people are going to be, they're more open and receptive to others and understanding their faults and comings. So I think you're 100% right. If she goes that route, it wouldn't be the best. But like you said, we have seen it with Iron Man, but it's almost like you wanted Iron Man to be better than he was. And I think if you look at Iron Man at the end of who he was, he definitely would have had a different approach. And I think Mr. Marvel sort of has to be this golden standard, this person to realize that everyone can work together. And we've seen it already a little bit because she's working with the Avengers, as we saw at the end of Shang-Chi. So she's not really someone who's going to push away. She did say that she's got more important things to worry about, which is true. But I don't see her going that route of really shunning and pushing Kamala. That would be a very bad look in my opinion as well. But all right, guys, that's going to do it for Miss Marvel over on the Circle Club. If you want to dive in more about the things that actually happened in this season, this episode, the X-Men, where we think the rest of the MCU is going, make sure you head over to What's Next with Corey and check out the video at the end of this video. You should see it right here on this little screen, and we could dive into some more things. Corey, my man, thank you for hopping on. I'll see you in the next video. And remember, everyone, just be you. Peace.